Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. It's always a privilege to review books from Cambridge University Press because of the quality of the publications and their applicability both to practitioners and to academics. And this particular book I'm looking at this morning is no dispute, no different. It's International Taxation of Trust Income, Principles, Planning and Design by Mark Brabazon. Now, the book came to us at Richmond Green Chambers and I thought, well, this is an interesting area of law. It's taxation. It's part of the Cambridge University Press Cambridge Tax Law series. And when I looked at it, I thought it would be well worth a review, because what we're talking about here is trusts and tax revisited. And it's looked at in a slightly different way, possibly, from the ways that many of these books are reviewed. There's the front of the book there, there's the spine, and then there's the back. You can hardly read. I had a lot of difficulty actually reading some of the information because of the way it's actually printed. However, that doesn't matter because we know it's about tax, and it's an important area in its own right. It's not a big book. It runs to just over 360 odd pages. The index at the back is by page numbering, and you can see again there that the structure is fairly easily set out. It does say the terminology in the index reflects the conceptual structures which are outlined in the book in relation to the attribution of trust-related income and the perspectives involved of a taxing country. So it's because it's international, it's looking at a whole different range of jurisdictions. You've then got the bibliography there right at the back, which is quite substantial. Again, a lot of work has been put into this by Brabazon. He's actually practices at the Sydney Bar in Australia. He holds a doctorate from the University of Sydney, and he's also extremely experienced. And it's a useful book because obviously we are very much in the global world today. Now, the front of the book, there is some information about the book itself, which I'm going to use for the review. The international taxation front page is there. The Cambridge Tax Law series, it says tax law is a growing area of interest. It is included as a subdivision in many areas of study. That's certainly the case today. And it's a key consideration in business needs throughout the world. I mean, I remember when I did my bar exams, we called it revenue law. It was slightly different then. I didn't do revenue as a specific substantive law area, but clearly it overlapped with our work, certainly when I did the bar exams, which is 30 years ago now. But again, it was taught, and as it's said here, the series editor is Professor Peter Harris. The point that's being made, though, is it is a subdivision of a bigger picture. And of course, this is the international element here. We've got the CUP details. There is a little dedication. We only review books that we think are important and relevant to practitioners and academics. I don't review books that I don't think highly of because there's no point. It's unfair on the author apart from anything else. And it's just something I wouldn't do. There's the contents section there. You can see the structure and the countries involved, the role of the beneficiary, the trust and so forth, international taxation. Then global taxation, always a big area as well. And again, you can see running all the way through 9 chapters in total with conclusions, summaries and conclusions, all of which are very helpful. Then you've got the appendices at the back and a bibliography. There are 4 appendices looking at beneficiary attribution and taxation. And they're looking at specific countries as well. Obviously, the main countries involved here are the UK, the US, Australia and New Zealand. Now you've got figures and tables, then you've got a preface, which is well worth reading. It's a heavy book. Any book I've seen on tax, generally speaking, is not the easiest book in the world to read. And bearing in mind, he refers quite quickly to Maitland, the unincorporated body, 1911. So you can see we're talking of a bit of history right at the beginning. Then you've got the end of the preface there. Then you've got a glossary, very useful glossary because of the words used. Sometimes you may not quite know what is being used, what is meant by a particular word or series of words. Reverse hybrid. An entity is a reverse hybrid with respect to a particular income. You see, you've got the detail there, so you've got a definition which will assist you depending on what it means. Then you've got the abbreviations. Again, very important in tax because there are a lot. Then you've got cases, and then after the cases you've got some statutes. Again, various countries listed for the statutes, of course, UK at the back, and then the US right at the end, and then some regulations as well. Then there are other authorities used for other countries. It's an international book. Then there are treaties, again, important treaties, very important precedents that are established. Then you've got the introduction to the work itself. So you see we've got into the book quite quickly. So although it says it's got about 350, you're looking at 400 odd pages. And the introduction, this book examines the principles by which countries exert international taxing claims over income derived by, through or from a trust, and the interaction of those taxing claims in treaty and non-treaty situations. So that's the basic mission of the book. You can see you've got the footnoting at the bottom, and just running through, you've got paragraph numbering, and then you've got the footnoting as well at the bottom. But please remember in this book that the actual index is about page numbering. And I think that's quite important because with some publishers they always go for the paragraph numbering. In this case we're talking specifically about pages. So what do I say? Well, in International Taxation of Trust Income, the author, Dr. Mark Brabazon, establishes the study of international taxation of trust income as a globally coherent subject covering principles, planning and design. That's the, as I say, the basic aim of looking at what happens with the trust income. And of course it has a great deal of direct relevance on people's lives, so you can see how important the subject matter is. The work covers the international tax settings in the following countries: Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom and the United States of America, and it looks at the taxation of grantors or settlers, we call them settlers, beneficiaries, trusts and trust distributions. And the book, of course, the author intends clearly with this book to identify a set of principles and corresponding tax settings that countries may apply to cross-border income derived by, through or from a trust. And that is something that it's something that's growing even at the moment, so you can see how important it is. It also identifies international mismatches between tax settings and what are merely the domestic design irregularities, if you like. In other words, haven't quite got it right at the domestic level. Such positions, of course, can cause anomalous, I'll get it right in a minute, double or non-taxation, and proposals for an approach to tax design are included that recognise the policy functions. That includes anti-avoidance of particular rules. I think it's important to note also the relative priority of different tax claims that are covered, the fiscal sovereignty of each country and the respective roles of national laws and tax treaties that apply. And I think that's an important point which comes out of the book throughout. Let me just cover what's in the book in this short review. The book includes consideration of the BPEPS report, the BEPS, I better just be specific, reforms, including the transparency entity clauses of the OECD Model Tax Treaty. Now it's important to know that because this is the global concepts, which I think as the century develops will become much more important. And so what we've got here are basically four main areas. The first one is it provides the first sustained analysis of international taxation of trust income as an internationally coherent subject. Secondly, it enables international trust taxation to be studied and certainly looked at as a topic alongside international taxation of companies and partnerships. So there's a lot of research that can come out of that. Then thirdly, it facilitates what is called, quote, a holistic approach to tax planning, analysis and design by practitioners, scholars and administrators. So I'm sure accountants will be interested in this book as well. Finally, it proposes tax design solutions to unintended double and non-taxation. And I think that's quite useful because whatever one's view about taxation, you can use some motive terms like tax avoidance, tax evasion. But the one thing that I do think is important, and it's logical, is tax planning. Now that is not avoidance. It is not evasion, it is planning sensibly for what is going to be an obligation that you have, whether it's national or international. And I don't think there should be any misunderstanding about that. And I do believe when it talks here about tax planning, I think that is really the key that came out of the book for me. The hardback book, this one, was first published on the 30th of April 2019, and it's also available as a hardback. Let's just have one last look at it. Dr. Brabazon's done a good job, I think, with this. There's the front, the spine, and then the back. It's, as I say, it's nice paper too. That's another thing I have to say. I think it's quite nice to have a book that has decent paper. The glossary, as I say, is useful. I mentioned BEPS. That is base erosion and profit shifting. And I think, again, I mentioned that in the review, but for those of you who are not familiar with it, that's where the abbreviation list comes in. Let's just look at the, here we go. Now, for those of you who, as I have done, have studied tax and trust law in this country, the words may be different. The word is the grantor. You see, that's the title there. We don't actually use that word in that sense, but you know what the meaning is. It's the settler, basically. And we're looking at the countries involved, and you can see the actual footnoting there and the information. You notice the little paragraph numbering. You should be able to find what you're looking for quite usefully. You then go on to the beneficiary itself, property income and so forth. All the usual, all the basic questions are there. And the beauty of this book is because it's actually, we're dealing now with a global community, not just the local jurisdictions. Very big thank you anyway to Cambridge University Press for the tax law series, and I'd like to thank Mark very much indeed for this excellent work. Do have a look at the review when it appears in the journals. Thank you to all. Bye bye.